stumbled upon this post on Reddit, and I want to go over it and analyze it because I think there's a lot of interesting things in it. We can learn a lot about male-female dynamics from reading it and analyzing it. I don't want to present myself as an expert on male-female relationships or dynamics, but I have been studying it more and more over the past few months, so I think I'm better at it now. So this post was written by a woman. I'm going to assume it's real. Some people in the comments say this isn't real, but I don't see any huge red flags. But if you see any, let me know. But I think this is real. And this is from a woman realizing, evidently, that she made a huge mistake in divorcing her husband. This is 6 months later, so not that long after. And as I go over it, I want to analyze it, like I said, and also get into, because there's a bunch of things that are left unsaid. There are some parts where she lies, but there are also some parts where she's honest, and both she and her husband make mistakes. Sometimes it's explained explicitly what those mistakes are, but sometimes it isn't at all, especially when it comes to the guy's mistakes. And I think understanding the problems here can help people, if they're already married, avoiding certain pitfalls. It can also help people understand maybe why it's not such a great idea to get married in the first place. Okay. 6 months later, divorcing my husband was a huge mistake. This one is long, but worth it for everyone to read. Typo. If I could give anyone a piece of advice for divorce, it would be to not do it under normal circumstances. If your spouse is beating you or threatening you or your children, then of course get out and fast. So yes, this I agree with. Getting a divorce is going to be very difficult, and most times you're going to be better off trying to make it work. In my case, there was no abuse. We were together for 8 years. That was mostly good, and we have 4 kids. Right around 5 years, I got a promotion at work. It's going to be important. And I got it in my head that my ex-husband was dragging me down, or at least holding me back from more success and a better life. We never had a lot of money, but with my promotion, I was now making more than he was. I started working longer hours, and at the same time, his hours were cut, so he was at home more. I really began to resent him because he was home, and because he got to spend time with our kids. Most nights when I got home, they were already getting ready for bed, if not already sleeping. After a few months of my new job, it was clear to me that things were not going well at home without me there. Some nights the dishes weren't done when I got home, or the kids hadn't eaten, or whatever else I could think of to be mad at him about. It really didn't matter. He kept saying that he would try harder, but it was hard being home all the time. That always made me really mad. Okay, so here in this first paragraph, we already get kind of to the smoking gun, or the first big paragraph, I guess. It's not technically the first. So she got a promotion at work. And I got it in my head that my ex-husband, that's what XH means, my ex-husband was dragging me down, or at least holding me back from more success and a better life. Okay, I wrote about this phenomenon, and I've heard about this enough times that I think it's at least notable that some women do this. The woman will get a promotion. So what does that mean in the woman's eyes? Or let's start here. How does a woman judge a man? Why do women think men are attractive? What makes men attractive in the eyes of a woman? A big part of it is the kind of job he has and how much money he has. So for example, women will, on the whole, there are exceptions, but on the whole, they will find a doctor, a lawyer, an investment banker. They will find those guys more attractive, all else being equal, than somebody who works as a garbage man. Or, is that what it's called? I forget. You know what I mean. Someone who collects garbage. Or someone who doesn't have a job. Now it's important to understand that men don't think that way at all. Men do not care about the kind of job a woman has. Men care about things like, is she beautiful? That includes things like, is she overweight or not? Ideally, she isn't. Is she feminine? Is she pleasant to be around? Is she agreeable? Shout out to Kevin Samuels that I learned all this stuff from. the late Kevin Samuels. He has a lot of great videos on YouTube that you're going to want to check out if you're interested in learning about what women look for, what men look for, and how they both misunderstand each other because they look for different things. So, like I said, men look for beauty, and women, they look for youth, especially if they want children, because youth means fertility. And also beauty peaks with youth, those correlate. So a woman in her early 20s generally is better looking than a woman in her early 30s and 40s and 50s. It just goes downhill from there. Same with fertility. After your mid-30s, it gets more difficult and also kind of dangerous to have kids. Men don't like it when a woman has had too many sexual partners. A lot of women think that's wrong. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying it isn't either. I'm just telling you that that's what a lot of guys think. They don't want to be with a woman who has already slept with 100 guys. So they want some sort of purity. 100 is exaggerating. They also wouldn't like it if she slept with, say, 20 guys, probably. That's not good either. Okay, but the important part is women care about a guy's status and income and job and that kind of stuff. Men do not care about that stuff at all. I think Kevin Samuels once put it like, if a guy sees a gorgeous woman working behind the counter at McDonald's, he does not care at all that she works at McDonald's. He will ask her out. So the mistake she is making here is that she thinks, there's a couple of mistakes. First, she thinks her value increased because she got a promotion at work. That would be the female way of looking at things, but it is not the male way of looking at things. Like I said, the man does not care what the woman does for work. Except if she's like a prostitute or has an OnlyFans or something, then he'll care. But for other reasons. He doesn't look for status in those things. Men generally don't care about the status of a woman. But in her own eyes, by her logic, by what she looks for in men, she applied that same logic to herself and thought that her value increased, meaning relative to that, her husband's value decreased. And now she thought that he was dragging her down, or at least holding me back from more success and a better life. So that's the first mistake. The other mistake is that I don't see how he would be dragging her down, because it's not like he's doing anything that would hold her back. Right? What she's implying here, I think, is that she could date up now. She couldn't, but she thinks she could. And so I think that's why she thinks that he's holding her back. Okay, so then she starts to resent him because he was at home because he got to spend time with our kids. So really what she's craving is the kind of traditional housewife role, while also at the same time wanting to reap the benefits of, or seeming benefits, she doesn't really get those benefits only in her eyes, but seeming benefits from having more success and making more money. We're going to get to that, what she actually wants, a little further down. Okay. For the next couple of years, things kept getting worse. My hours weren't any shorter, and his were on and off full time. There was no convenient time for him to be working full time because of my hours, but we also needed the money. Whenever he would tell me that he could get extra hours, I would always complain, and the less hours he worked, the more I complained that he wasn't bringing in enough money. Okay, so you can't have it both ways. You can't both complain that he's at home too much and that he's not home enough. Whenever he brought up the contradiction, okay, so yeah, at least she's acknowledging that there's a contradiction there. Whenever he brought up the contradiction, I would tell him that he needed to figure it out. Okay, so she puts the onus on resolving her contradiction on him. That is not fair. I knew that it would bother him, so I started saying a lot, and for everything that I could. I really started to resent him, and I pulled away from him. I knew that it was hurting him, but I didn't care. If he didn't want to be hurt, then he would at least try to make me happy. This is unbelievable. I don't just want to trash this woman, I actually want to get deeper than that, but this is the kind of stuff where you go, I don't even know what to say. Think about this. If he didn't want to be hurt, then he would at least try to make me happy. So she feels unhappy, and then she says, it must be his fault. There was no self-reflection there at all. And then it must be his fault, and then that's more reason to be unhappy. And then that's again his fault, and so it's just a vicious cycle at that point. I used that same thing to justify when I started to talk to another guy at work. This is, she's going to talk more about this, but usually, I mean, look at this. She's saying, I used that same thing to justify when I started to talk to another guy at work. If she had just talked to the guy, there'd be nothing bad there. There'd be nothing to justify there. Just talking to someone is not a big deal. She was doing more than just talk to him. She was flirting with him. Maybe they were getting physical, or at least emotionally intimate. Something was happening that was morally questionable, and she had to find a reason. She had to find a way to justify it. So this right here, this is dishonest. She's not being as straightforward as she should be. She's sugarcoating things here. I thought he was just a friend. This is a lie. But talking at work turned into texting at home, and then pictures and videos, and then trying to sneak some alone time with him. So again, what does alone time mean? Pretty sure that means they were physical. It's like when you ask a woman her body count, the general rule is that she'll divide it by 3 or something, because she knows that it matters to guys, and she knows that they will judge her for it. This is the same thing. She won't openly admit that she slept with the guy, or maybe she does later. If she does, I should give her credit for that. I don't think she does, if I recall correctly. She just keeps it vague. But if you read between the lines, it's pretty clear what happened, right? Okay, so I knew that it was wrong, but it made me feel so alive, and my husband had not made me feel like that in years. So again, her husband is to blame for her negative feelings. That's what she thinks. I was tired of being unhappy, and I was doing this for me. The worst was the night that I came home at a reasonable time and found that he had cleaned the whole house, cooked the whole family dinner, and picked out a movie for all of us to watch together. So in other words, he has his shit together. He fulfills her request of getting shit done at home. So he's doing the things that she requested of him. And then she says, this would have made me swoon a couple years earlier, but that night I couldn't even look at him, and I pretended to be sick. I spent the rest of the night in bed while he waited on me and checked on me and even made me different food and brought it to me in bed. It made me feel terrible. And then it made me angry that he made me feel that way. And by the end of the night, I was texting with the other guy. Okay, so she is doing something morally reprehensible. She's cheating on her husband. Her husband is being a sweetheart. Right? He's doing everything she asked. She then feels bad because she's doing something morally questionable. She feels bad and then blames him for feeling bad. So what is she saying here? She's saying she wishes her husband would be more of an asshole. Some guys wonder why women are attracted to assholes. Well, maybe this is part of the reason. Okay. Over the next month or two from that night, it did not matter what he did. He was wrong just for breathing most days. He would get so upset with how I was treating him and how I would just wait and egg him on into losing it because I knew it would happen eventually. After most of the fights we had, he would apologize for whatever I told him he did wrong, if there even was something, but I never did. Yeah, probably because she didn't know what it was. Or he never did anything wrong. It was she who did something wrong, felt bad about it, and then it was his fault for her feeling bad. And he would apologize. That's a mistake. So as I mentioned at the beginning, he's making mistakes too. I'm not saying he's the one to blame morally for their divorce, but he's also making mistakes I'm going to get into. I would usually find a way to make him feel even worse. Oh, by the way, I think I forgot to mention, when she gets mad at him instead of being mad at herself for what she did, I think that's called projection. Anyway, I knew that I was right because he was wrong. And that was all that mattered to me. Okay, so we got to give her some credit for being honest here. She lied. She was kind of sneaky about what happened with the other guy at work, but she's being honest here. And there's a lot of honesty in this whole post, so that's good. I even pretended that I didn't care when he found out about my relationship with the guy from work. Okay, so now suddenly it's a relationship. See how we jumped there? First it was just talking. Then it was texting at home, pictures and videos. Okay, pictures and videos of what? Were those sexual in nature? Probably. And then trying to sneak some alone time with him. So like I said, this is misleading. She's sleeping with the guy. That's what that means, I think. Now it's a relationship. So this is not even casual anymore. They actually have a thing going. And it takes time to get to a relationship, so this must have been going on for a while. Okay, it really destroyed me inside to see him holding back tears, him being the husband, but I wasn't going to let him see that. He was at his weakest, and that was when I chose to tell him that I wanted a divorce. I could almost hear his heart shattering inside his chest. He talked and fought. Mistake. I'm going to get into that. And said that we could work through it together. I really wasn't interested in fixing our marriage. Yep. Reinforced by his mistake. But I mostly ended things with the other guy, but only because I knew I could get it back if I wanted it. Okay, she's being sneaky here again for two reasons. She mostly ended things, so not really. She's saying something here that isn't really true. She wants credit for ending things when she didn't really end things. And here she's admitting her past dishonesty. She's saying, only because I knew I could get it back if I wanted it. So he's becoming like, that's not really ending things, right? Really ending something is, there's not an easy way to just get back together if you want to. She's keeping him in her back pocket in case she feels alone or needs attention or something. And most guys are really desperate for sex, so he would be happy to, and she knows this, and so this guy would be happy to just jump back in and fill that void and play that role for her. The supportive guy who helps her through the divorce of her with her asshole husband. Right? That's how she would describe these things to him. I could see that he was trying, the husband, and occasionally I would let him know, but for the most part I kept being a huge bitch to him for any and all reasons that I could think of. I could see that he was trying, occasionally I would let him know. I don't know what she would let him know. That she could see that he was trying? It's not like it's even on him to try, because he did nothing wrong. He's being a saint. He did nothing wrong, and he's trying. See, this is the difference. He is looking for fault in himself. She is looking for fault only in him, not herself. And so that's why he ends up trying. Because he's like, okay, maybe I did do something wrong. He's being self-critical. He is open to having made mistakes. She's not open to that. To her having made mistakes herself. I'm not sure how much more the man could have done to make me happy, besides finding a job that paid enough for me to not have to work at all. Okay, so this is why I said earlier that what she really wants deep down is to be a traditional housewife. As she said, that they didn't have much money ever, I think. We never had a lot of money, yeah. So I'm guessing they were just not in a position where she could do that, where he could pay for that kind of lifestyle that she wanted. But I think for a lot of women who say that what they want is, they want a job and they want to be independent and all that stuff, is they should really be honest with themselves and ask themselves if maybe what they want really deep down is having kids and being at home with them and raising those kids and having a husband who can afford that lifestyle, who can give them that. So she's saying he did everything he could except maybe this thing that might have made her happy. But from what she's said so far, she probably still would have found fault in him, and I also think that wouldn't have worked at this point for reasons I'll get into. He said he was looking, but looking and finding are two different things. Yeah, I mean, she still seems to think this way to some degree, because she doesn't. She's not saying he said he was looking, but at the time, I was under the mistaken impression that looking and finding are two different things. I mean, it's not wrong that looking and finding are two different things, but I was under the mistaken impression that this mattered, or that he wasn't a champ for putting up with my bullshit, and that this even mattered. She's saying looking and finding are two different things, so she still seems to. I don't think she's completely, abandoned her bad justifications and motivated reasoning and all that stuff. It was around this time that I discovered this group. I'm guessing she's referring to this subreddit. And a few others. I started posting things about him from my perspective only, and I got so much positive feedback for how I was feeling that I knew I was right. The more I posted, the more validation that I got. It wasn't just me who knew that my ex-husband wasn't worth keeping around. I had the whole internet telling me how terrible he is. I started saying awful things to him, and even outright ignoring him. I was so confident with mine and everyone else's opinion that I contacted a lawyer and within a couple of weeks had filed for divorce. I continued to use the site and a couple others to validate my feelings and for encouragement to go through with it, and finally it was done. Okay. Let's see what's in here. Right, so she's aware that this was a mistake here. She says, because from my perspective only, she says that she's implying that this was wrong. And she's also admitting that getting positive feedback led her to mistakenly believe that she knew she was right. First of all, from an epistemological, Popperian point of view, you never know that you're right. You cannot know that because there's no criterion of truth. Earlier she said something along the lines of, I knew I was right because he was wrong or something. That's arbitrary. You could just switch sides and say the same thing, and you'd be none the wiser. But this is important to realize. I think women more than men seek validation. What they will do is they will get together online or in person, and they will complain about their lives, how horrible their lives are, even when their lives aren't really horrible at all, and they will validate each other. It's a cliche, but it's true that women operate a lot more on feelings than on reason and facts. I'm not saying they should just ignore their feelings, but they will never ever consider that maybe their feelings are wrong. And also that feelings don't trump facts or reasons, or reason. And then you get into these echo chambers and this other vicious cycle where the more validation you get, the more you know you are right. Of course, underneath the hood, between the lines, this is all dishonest, because if you knew you were right, why did you need the validation in the first place? So really what this means is that they have self-doubt. They don't actually know that they're right. They really want to be right. And so they look for validation. So I know I was right. I think that's a lie. Okay. It went pretty smoothly. The divorce that is. The ex-husband didn't ask for much besides to not get divorced and to try to work it all out. I didn't care about that though. Is this where I want to explain? Let's see. He was broken, but I was free. Excuse me. I could do whatever I wanted without having to feel any guilt or answer to anybody. It was an amazing feeling of freedom. It didn't last long though. Yeah, okay. So there is a recurring theme of the ex-husband trying to work things out. I think that's a mistake. There was one time somebody wrote into Bill Burr's podcast, Bill Burr, the comedian. A lot of people write into him for relationship advice. And he has a segment on his show where people write in and he gives them advice on any number of things, but a good amount of them are for relationship advice. So this husband writes in about how he's just at wit's end because his wife keeps mistreating him and is just terrible to him, and they also have kids like this woman here and or this couple here, and he has been doing everything he can to do, to put things back on the right track. And I don't think Bill Burr ever arrives at this conclusion. I think I learned this from Chris Canwell. He wrote that book, Atomic Attraction. shout out to him. I think he said, women in relationships, they will pull away at some point and they will try to test you. And their quote-unquote logic for doing this is, if you're a high-value man, you will not be bothered by that because you know that you have options. So this is basically how they gauge if you have options. If you then try to plead with them and say, oh no, please, let's make this work, I don't want to lose you, then for them that's confirmation that you're low value, and all the more reason, it will just turn them off. It'll just turn them away. Now, I know at the beginning this might be hard to understand as a guy, because you're like, well, she's giving me all these grievances, so I'm going to fix those grievances. That's not actually what this is about. The problem is women often don't know what they want, and they often don't say what they want. They'll tell you something else that they want, but really they want another thing. So, for example, she'll say, like this woman here, you never do the dishes. Okay, so then he did do the dishes. So he addressed the grievance, right? He specifically addressed the specific grievance with a solution. What did we see? She felt awful that he did it. She didn't like that he did it. So, what should you do if a woman puts you on the spot like that, if a woman tests you like that? I think you should, even if it really does trouble you, even if it really phases you, you should not let on. And you should instead simply say, okay, there's the door if you don't like it. And it depends on the gravity of her grievances. So for example, she gives you an ultimatum. She's threatening to break up with you, like this lady is here. She's threatening to divorce you. I don't think it's a good idea to fight for her. Say, okay, there's the door. Or you can say, like, oh yeah, you're right. You're right, maybe this really isn't a good idea. Something like that. By the way, if you follow any of this, I'm not liable to this at your own risk. Anyway, so yeah, women may test you in that way. They want to see if they can rattle you, and if you give in to that, if you try to work it out, you address their grievances, then that just shows them that you're a low-value man in their eyes, and then they will have even more of a reason to walk away. And they will resent you for being a good man if they have been a bad woman. Because then, as we saw earlier, that makes them feel guilty, and they'll blame that on you instead of themselves, as they should. Okay, where did I stop? I think here. It was an amazing feeling of freedom. It didn't last long, though. In the first month after he moved out, I missed garbage day 3 times. Okay, so she's admitting that she can't up with the basic stuff, with basic life stuff that she blamed him for. So she's no better at him than that stuff. There was also rarely a single clean dish, and the laundry sat in piles so long. Aren't piles high, not long? Oh, no, for a long time, I see. That I had to start doing the sniff test to see if it could be worn again. That's kind of TMI. I also never saw my kids more miserable. My oldest had seen some of the messages from the other guy months earlier, and she knew that my ex-husband still wanted to try to work it out. I'm kind of wondering how the timeline adds up here. If this was months earlier, did the kid know about the affair before the husband did? I don't know, that could be a whole thing. And then she probably pressured the kid into keeping silent? I don't know, maybe not. It's unclear here. She knew that so this is the daughter, and the daughter knew that the ex-husband still wanted to try to work it out. It didn't take her long to stop talking to me at all, except to say that she wanted to go to the ex-husband's house. The others all told me that they wanted to live with the ex-husband too. I did my best to try to make them happy, but I ended up just buying them toys all the time, and the happiness only lasted minutes. Yeah, this doesn't work. Kids are not idiots, as much as people think they are. Kids are not idiots at all. They're going to see through this. They're going to realize that this is a dishonest attempt to try to win them over when you really don't know what would make them happy. Of course, what would make them happy if you hadn't been a terrible wife in the first place, and a terrible mother by extension. This is why it bothered me so much when in the beginning she said that she had nobody to answer to. Yeah, you do. Once you have kids, you have to answer to your children. It's a big responsibility. If you're not prepared to do that, you shouldn't have children. Okay, I was also having a lot of trouble with work. Being alone, I couldn't work all those extra hours that I was expected to. I finally gave in and started calling the ex-husband to watch the kids. He would always come over as soon as he could, and he always asked me if I needed anything. When I would get home, I would find clean dishes and laundry and even dinner sometimes. He would never say too much after I got home. He would just say to call him if I needed anything and leave. One night he took out the garbage and brought it to the curb because it was garbage night and I forgot again. He always looked so sad when it was time to go. So she's having empathy for him, but she's still kind of making it about herself. Because like she's bringing up all the things that he does for her. And she also, what she kind of glosses over is that she got custody of the kids, evidently. And even though her kids asked to live with him, he's still the one coming over to their place. So, yeah, like she feels empathy, but is she going to give him custody? Evidently not. And so then the question, okay, why write all this if you're not going to give him custody? Or at least shared custody? Right now it sounds like he has maybe visitation rights or something. Like at her discretion, clearly she's able to call him in like a butler when she needs his help. And she probably knows that he's happy to do so because he really wants to see his kids. And so this is how she can get him to do things. She didn't call him to see his kids when she was like, oh, he should be able to see his kids. She called him when she needed help figuring things out, like with the trash and the laundry and stuff like that. So I can just shake my head at that. And also you have to wonder, okay, what the hell happened in that divorce court? I mean, she did say that he didn't ask for much. So, but if he really wanted to see his kids, wouldn't he have asked for custody? That seems like a no-brainer that he would have asked for custody, because clearly he's very happy to see his kids. And so then you got to wonder, okay, she's the one who cheated. He did nothing wrong except not being as high, having a high enough status in her eyes, and making her apparently feel bad for having an affair. It was really her who felt bad at, or who was mad at herself for that. And normally you'd think that some of these, especially having an affair, breaking your wedding vows, breaking this contract that you enter into, this agreement when you get married, that would count for something in divorce court. Apparently if you're a woman, it does not. It does not matter. She was the one who fucked things up, but she still gets custody. It's amazing. So you really got to wonder what, I think Bill Burr asks us a bunch, what is in it for the guy to get married? Like, why? If it doesn't even give you access to your kids after a divorce. Yeah, I've written about this a little bit. This also pertains to reproductive rights in general, but I've written about how men have no reproductive rights. This isn't the kind of story where she got pregnant and he didn't want the kids and she had them anyway and then made him pay for it. That's a tale as old as time. By the way, that reminds me, I saw this awful story about I think she was a teacher who was in her early 30s. She statutory raped a 13-year-old, I think her student, got pregnant with his baby, decided to keep the baby. Of course, he has no say in that because men have no reproductive rights. And what did the court rule? Not only is she not going to prison for statutory raping him, but he is going to be on the hook for child support once he turns 18. It is unbelievable what these women get away with. Absolutely unbelievable. There was another story where a woman went to, did she go to jail? Or anyway, there were some repercussions for her. I think it was jail. Some other woman bragged online about sleeping with a dog, and she faced far more severe repercussions than the teacher who statutory raped the 13-year-old boy. So what does that tell us? Does it tell us that courts, when it comes to men's rights, value dogs more than men? It's disgusting. I also wrote about how women shouldn't divorce after promotion. As I mentioned earlier, this is the article. And I explain more like why a woman might do that and why a woman is mistaken to do that, because it hurts both of them. It hurts the woman and the husband, as we're seeing here. Don't do this. If you get a promotion, it changes nothing. Well, not nothing, but it doesn't increase your value in the eyes of men, and it doesn't decrease the value of your man. Okay. What else have I written about? But yeah, you can also read this chat about male-female dynamics if you want to learn more, I guess. And just more stuff about what men and women look for in each other. I wrote about that here. And then underlying this issue with this thing that, oh, now I make more than my husband, and ideally I'd want a husband who makes more than me. It's not what she says, but this is part of why she resented him in the beginning. That's called hypergamy, or that's commonly called hypergamy. And I go into other issues with that and what real hypergamy is in this article. So I recommend that you read that too. Okay, let's continue to the end here. Finally, after a couple of months, my friends convinced me to go out on a date. It was for dinner and a movie, and I was excited and hopeful, but at dinner I started getting a feeling of overwhelming guilt. It got so bad that I ended up not even going to the movie. A week and about 1 million tears later, I was on a therapist's couch. I told her everything that had happened, starting with the promotion that I got at work. She did not agree with me or with any of the encouragement to divorce that I got. Okay, so finally she's getting some pushback. Finally she's getting some criticism. I ended up in her office, and this is helping her make progress, getting criticism. I ended up in her office 2 and sometimes 3 times a week, and the more that I talked to prove that I was right, the more I started to see how wrong I was. Yeah, because this is totally the wrong approach. You should engage to see if maybe you're wrong. But, okay, let's give her credit for realizing that that was a mistake. It was truly heartbreaking. I don't know if I cried as much in my whole life as I did in the first month in her office. After about $2,000 of therapy sessions, I learned that my ex-husband had his faults. Yeah, but why even mention them? But I figured out that mine were so much worse, okay? I did so many awful things and said awful things that I wouldn't want to be with me, but he did. I still remember him asking me in the meeting with the lawyer to please not go through with it. I did go through with it, though. Yeah, this was again the mistake that he made. Don't beg a woman not to do something, not to end the relationship. I did go through with it, though, and then later I bragged on here how great it felt. I was so wrong, and now I can see it. A couple of weeks ago, I went outside with him when he was leaving the house. I asked him about getting back together. Yeah, this is just selfish in a bad way at this point. You kind of have to wonder how bad she feels because she fucked up, or how bad she feels just because her life is harder now. Would she feel this way if her life was easier? Is she actually interested in correcting her mistakes and taking accountability? Or is she still just feeling bad for herself? When he looked at me, his eyes were full of tears and a couple went down his cheeks. He told me that he didn't know if he could. He said that the pain has been too much for too long, and if we got back together, that I might just turn around and do it to him again. Yeah, so he's finally wising up. I think that's exactly what would happen. If he went back with her, if they got back together, she would consider that, most likely, it's not a guarantee, but most likely she would consider that a weak move on his part. She would conclude that he must be low value, because if he had other women lining up to be with him, he wouldn't have done that. He wouldn't have gotten back together with him. He would have gotten a better woman who deserved him. And then so she's going to conclude that he's low value and that she's going to break up with him again. She's just going to hurt him again. The only time that, I think at this point the boat has sailed, but like in other situations that are not as grave, maybe what you could do is you could say, I don't know about this, I'm open to it, but it would take a long time, and I would really need to see some, I would really need to see that you've changed. I would really need to see that I'd need to see some proof of work, so to speak. No promises. All right, let's see how this goes. That would probably be the most that you could give them. And then if they really earned it, then you can get back with them relatively safely, because they will not conclude that you're low value. Because she won't conclude that he's low value because he made her work for it. But like I said, in this situation, that boat has sailed. He should not get together with this woman. Where was I? He said that the pain had been too much for too long, that if we got back together, I might just turn around and do it to him once again. Yeah, do it to him again. Yes, exactly. He said that he always thought that I would realize how much he loved me and stop until I... See, this is another mistake. I don't think she ever wrote, unless I missed it, I don't think she ever wrote that she felt unloved. And then he is making the common mistake of many men who then say, oh, if I just, my wife is complaining, my wife or girlfriend, if I just show them how much I love them, they're going to appreciate it. It's not necessarily true. Anyway, he said that he always thought that I would realize how much he loved me and stop up until I signed the divorce papers, and let out a big, over-exaggerated sigh of relief. Yeah, she's just a bitch. He said that hurt him more than anything else, and that he doesn't know if he can ever trust me again. I don't blame him. I destroyed a man who, looking back, was a great husband. Okay, so now he was a great husband. Earlier, he had some flaws, had his faults. Okay, I deprived my kids of having a great father in the house with them, and I took his kids away from him. Okay, well, that's a mistake you can correct, right? Give him joint custody. Or if the kids want to live with him, let them live with him. Then he should have main custody, because that's what he and the kids want, and you made the mistake. So, actions speak louder than words. I feel like she's definitely feeling sorry for herself. Her life is harder now, and she feels overwhelmed. And why has she not given him custody yet? Because it's been months. This is 6 months later. Yeah, she's had plenty of time to do that. Anyway, and me, the one who pushed for the divorce, expecting happiness and a life of freedom, spending all my free time sitting at home or sitting on a therapist's couch. Yep. Please don't just take the advice of anyone on the site or any other about getting a divorce. If your marriage is bad, look at yourself first and see if you can make changes. Okay, well, please do this again and give your husband custody. This is advice from men and women. Yeah, I mean, this part is, but the kinds of... So, sometimes people say this to be, like, even and fair and have, like, a so-called balanced view or whatever, because if you single women out or if you single men out, I mean, mostly if you single women out, then people will say that you're sexist or you must hate women or who hurt you, that kind of thing. When in reality, what you're doing is you're just looking critically at relationships. The truth is, he and her made different kinds of mistakes. She thought that what women look for in a relationship is also what men look for in a relationship, and that therefore her husband's value is lower now that she got a divorce. That was her initial mistake. That then led to a lot more mistakes on her part. His main mistake was being rattled by her, giving in to her demands, and begging her to stay together. It's a huge turnoff for women. Those two things are things we don't really read here. Those are not mentioned explicitly, and I don't think she knows that. She knows that she was mistaken about, or at least she kind of hints at it, because she's writing it from his perspective of looking back and the kinds of mistakes she made. She knows that she was wrong to conclude that her husband was dragging her down just because she got a promotion. I think she knows that, but I don't think she knows why she made that mistake in the first place. We don't learn that much about the husband, so we don't know if he ever learned that was his mistake, being too ready to please her. and begging to stay together. But yeah, I think that was, like I said, that was his big mistake. Getting divorced is not fun, being divorced is not fun, and seeing your husband broken and your children never happy because of your actions is the most painful experience that I can imagine. I wish all of you well. Well, okay. Yeah. What can I say? Men, stay away from women like that. And if you do find yourself married to one, don't just give in to their demands. Don't let them rattle you. And women, don't just learn about what men actually want. I mean, think about, shout out again to Kevin Samuels, the late Kevin Samuels, rest in peace. But like how, I don't think women really understand what men want, what they look for in a relationship. And that's kind of the underlying issue here. Like I said, she did not understand that she was not in any position to make more demands on her husband just because she got a promotion. Getting a divorce after promotion, as I write here, is a masculine move. Now, due to feminism, a lot of women are becoming men. They want to get a career, they want to be, go-getters, and they want to run their own lives. And that's all well and good, except when it leads to stuff like this, where, okay, well, if a man did this, that would make a lot more sense. If a man gets a promotion, and now he makes, 20% more than he did before, that actually means something in terms of his sexual market value. Because women look for that kind of stuff. I'm not saying that if a man makes more money, he should now get divorced. But it certainly seems like a mistake if you're, I don't know about certainly, but sometimes you see really rich guys who got rich later in life, at a point when they were already married, and you gotta wonder, aren't they regretting it? Because now they could be sleeping with so many beautiful women. Like Joe Rogan, for example, is really rich now, but he's already married and he already has kids. But I don't know, maybe he just doesn't look for that kind of life. Or a lot of men want to have more sex than they do. They're chronically lacking sex. And they can't get it unless they work on themselves first. So usually men have these long stretches of dry spells, most men. And then the top 10, 20% of men get all the sex, basically, more or less. Anyway, so if a guy were to divorce after promotion, I'm not saying it's right, but at least it would kind of make sense, because his sexual market value actually increases. Whereas if a woman divorces after promotion, that makes absolutely no sense, because men don't care about that. And think about it, she doesn't say how old she is, but they were together for 8 years. She has 4 kids. Let's say I think it's realistic to say that she's in her early to mid-30s. I don't think she ever considered that it would be difficult to find another committed relationship. She will find guys who will sleep with her, because men are always looking for sex. But they're not going to commit to her, especially now that she has children. I think a lot of women don't understand this. Kevin Samuels makes a point of this too. When women already have children, what is in it for the next guy to become a stepdad? There's nothing in it, except, there might be some exceptions, of course. I'm generalizing here. One exception I could see is maybe if a man can't have children, just biologically, and he really would like to have some, and the kids are still really young, so that he could really become their father, maybe there's an exception there. But overall, especially if the woman expects you as a stepdad to pay for a bunch of stuff for the kids. They're not your kids, so now they're a financial liability. Yeah, it makes no sense. So she's going to have a very difficult time finding another committed relationship. She's probably not prepared to live alone, because she already can't even do the dishes and like do laundry. She's already overwhelmed with that. She can't even get the basics right. So she's going to need a man to take care of her. Is she going to find one now that she's divorced? No, like I said, she'll find sex, but she's not going to find. If she looks decent, she'll find sex. Maybe relatively easily, but that's not what she's looking for. She will want another committed relationship, and she's going to have a very difficult time finding it. That's what a lot of women don't understand, I think. They think that because it's usually pretty easy to find sex, like to be surrounded with men, and to kind of keep like a circle of men around them that they can always fall back on. They kind of keep in the friend zone and then pull them out of friend zone on demand when they feel like it. They feel like, therefore, it's easy to get those men to agree to a committed relationship. But that's totally different. Kevin Samuels would say women control access to sex, but men control access to committed relationships. That's not her call. So what men will do, I saw this on another show or podcast or whatever, I don't know who makes it, but there's an equivalent of friend zoning. It's usually women who friend zone men, in the sense that they're going to keep hanging out with them and keep having the men pay for their stuff like movie tickets and going out to dinner and whatnot, but they won't sleep with those men. That's friend zoning, or it's a form of friend zoning. And what the women don't realize is that men have their own analog of friend zoning, and that's, I think they called it, on the podcast, they called it fuck zoning. So it's like you keep sleeping with a woman, but in the back of your head, you've already made up your mind that you're never going to agree to a committed relationship with her. And you enjoy sex enough to keep sleeping with her, but you don't. You're not going to ever take that step to make it official, so to speak. So, yeah, she's going to be miserable for a while. I think the best thing she can do now is get her husband unfettered access to the children, let them live with whomever they please, and just try to be friends with him. It's probably the best thing she can do at this point. Anyway, so to recap, like I said, I think two main mistakes were made here. The first one was that she doesn't understand what increases or lowers her value and what increases or lowers his value relative to hers. All other mistakes that she made kind of followed from that. Probably one notable one is the epistemological mistake of seeking to be right and thinking that others are wrong, so I must be right. That just doesn't work at all that way. His main mistake was begging to stay together and being rattled when his woman tried to rattle him. So those are the things I would look out for. I think these are both bad things to do.